Well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be watching us from, whether it's right now when we're live or on the replay or listening to this on my podcast. So I am so excited to have this event tonight. It's been long awaited as I had to, cancel it a few months ago. And I have such a great panel of experts with me tonight. And so I am going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about you and what you do. So let's start with Lisa, and then we'll go to Christopher and to Stephanie, and then back up to me.
Well, thank you very much, Annette. My name is Lisa Napolitano Swartz. I'm a certified meeting professional. I'm the principal of Meeting Services Outsource Specialists, which is shortened Meeting SOS. I've been a meetings and event planner for many years and enjoy it greatly. And I have array of different clients that I work for, either in-house with them or just on site or as an extension of their group remotely. And it's been a fun ride, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Thanks, Lisa.
Christopher Johnson. My company is Calm Clear Communications. I produce engaging virtual events for speakers, trainers, coaches. I help them get past the tech hurdles. My background, IT and broadcasting. So virtual events is a nice marriage of those two.
Mm.
Great. Thanks. And Stephanie?
Yes, thank you, Annette, for having me on your show this evening. I'm very excited. My name is Stephanie Zapata. I'm the Director of Business Development with Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. I have been in the industry for unbelievably just under 30 years. I can't believe it's been that long. I started out in the travel agency and meeting side, and then moved over to the sales side. And I've worked with many different organizations, helping my clients to have successful meetings at the various properties that I've worked at. So thank you.
Well, great. Again, as I said, I am so excited to have you all here tonight with me. And so, let's kind of get right to it. And there's this whole thing, as I was doing a little research ahead of time, and I've talked to other people, and this whole thing with events. Some I hear say, "Oh, live events. Live events are back." I've read that everybody's going to be doing live. Then I read, oh, there's still a little COVID going around, and so a hybrid is the way to go. And then I've also read virtual. Virtual is here to stay. And so, um, you know, what do you all think? Where are we going? And what's it going to be like this year?
Well, I'll start.
Okay.
Meetings are back and they're stronger than ever. There is a high demand for programs that in various sizes, and so much so that availability and dates are not as easy to find as they may have been in the past. So meetings are definitely happening. People want to be live.
And you're saying, in person?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry.
No. And what are your thoughts, Lisa?
I agree. It's really quite amazing. I did not think there would be a strong a bounce back from post right after COVID and everything else, but I definitely am seeing. I mean, it is like full steam ahead. I mean, people I think were trapped, and it's been a long time, and all of a sudden now it's back. And just as Stephanie said, I mean, on the meeting side, she's in the supplier side. We are experiencing as planners trying to find meeting space. This is a good indicator, is the point. If you are trying to find an actual physical meeting space and you are coming back with not available, not available, not available, that's unheard of. I mean, really, I'm telling you, and that's what we're hearing. So it's so good for the whole industry. It's just that it's a very good indicator of how that live meetings are definitely back.
Okay. Christopher, you do a lot with virtual. So where does that stand?
Well, see, let's see. I'll say meetings are kind of back.
Okay.
Virtual, I don't think is going away because there's the flexibility and convenience of not having to travel.
Hmm.
And people enjoy that. People have become accustomed to making the meeting fit into their schedule as opposed to rearranging their schedule to fit the meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead, Stephanie.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was fixing my glasses.
I was going to say, Christopher is right about that. That's the caveat. It's that there are certain types of meetings and events that are going forward, but I don't believe that it's ever going to go back 100% because the aspect there, for example, I just did a meeting over the summer. The preponderance of the attendees all came out to the site. However, there were 3 or 4 of some of the main speakers that were not, it's not that they didn't want to be there or couldn't be there. In this case, it was a budgetary concern. And so what happened was while the rest of the group was in person at the facility, we were sort of beaming in, like Christopher saying, these people, either the trainers or the speaker. And so it filled a budget concern, but also we also had another person who got sick, who couldn't travel, got COVID actually. And so some main player of the meeting. So instead of scrapping the whole meeting or getting someone else to speak, they beamed him in from there. So sorry for using that terminology, Christopher. I'm sure there's a much better way to put it.
Well, the thing that's interesting to me is that, virtual, I belong to an organization, and as their membership chair, I'm very involved with the conferences. If we have virtual or if we have, in person. And after 2 years of virtual, we had an in person in September. And now the planning for this year is going to be hybrid. And, I also, and it is, I mean, it's so convenient for virtual. And, truthfully, I hear from some people who work at even large organizations that it's virtual is a better money maker for the event itself if it's virtual rather
Really?
than in person. So I'd like your thoughts on that. But also, to Lisa's point about the speakers, I did go to an event. It was hybrid. It was a women's conference out of Pennsylvania. And, I went virtually. It was like one day virtual and one day in person. And a lot of the speakers, as you mentioned, Lisa, were virtual. And what they had was, like if I was a speaker, I had my recorded presentation. Hi, I'm Annette, and blah, 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 what I was going to talk about. And then the speaker would come on live for like a 15-minute Q&A. So kind of what are your thoughts about the money making of the virtual, the saving money on that, and also the whole thing is, do you think that will continue with speakers to sort of beam in rather than come?
Sorry, I used that term.
That's fine. It works.
It's gonna
Hey, when everyone understands the term, that's the term. The flexibility that comes about from having some speakers be virtual is great. I've worked events where they recorded their presentation as a backup, and well, it did get used, and they were able to come in for Q&A. That works great. It also, recording the presentation for some people takes away the angst of presenting live. For whatever reason, I haven't figured this out. Some people are terrified of speaking in public.
Sorry.
Yeah. I get that a lot, and I'll share some of my experiences with that. Other thoughts on the whole idea of our virtual? Is it a better moneymaker, and the whole thing with speakers? Lisa, do you have any thoughts on that? Do you think the speakers are going to be zooming in the future?
I don't know about from my end of the business. I don't know about it sort of being a money maker as opposed to a money saver. Although sometimes, I mean, I know people think that there's certain aspects of a person being virtual, attending a meeting virtual, that is less expensive. The travel, the time, it's a human, it's a lot of things. However, I'm sure Stephanie can relate. I mean, from the the sales of the facility, and I mean it can be expensive. It cost a lot of money for us to get to make sure that we had technicians and stuff in-house on site to make sure that that streaming was seamless. And sometimes the bandwidth that you need for that is not a typical thing. You have to ramp it up, and that costs money too.
Mhm.
So what I was saying is that what it's saved in is that some speakers themselves will charge more for themselves to physically have to go because there's travel, they have to stay overnight somewhere, there's a hotel, there's food and beverage. These are the things that they don't have to do, especially if they have a small spot of time and your time slot's only 2 hours. Okay, well, almost any speaker could fit in 2 hours into their schedule. And so in fact, we did save some money because the speaker said, if I don't have to travel, there's a different rate. I just don't know about bringing in money because that's not the type of organizations that I do. And I'm not usually producing for pay events. So I
Okay.
don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that, when you talk about virtual or hybrid, there is a lot of cost that goes into the technical and
Mhm.
audiovisual piece of it for
Mhm.
sure. I happened to speak to a client about a week or 2 weeks ago that they used to do their trainings live. And then when they started going virtual, they found that they were able to get more people in attendance, and it's an education, training that people need to do in order to maintain credits. And so they are continuing to do that. However, she said next year they probably will do some regional. But so for something like that, maybe that's where there's a moneymaker because they're not having to spend the money to send people, airfare or trains or cars, however, airplanes, trains, and automobiles. And maybe that's where a quote unquote money maker could come into play because they're not spending the money.
Yeah, I think of that in the organization that I belong to. It's mostly, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs. And so, if I leave my business to travel to New Orleans, which I did for a week, then, as you said, the travel down, the travel back, and beyond the expense, it's time that I'm away from my business. And so if it's virtual, as you were saying, I think it was you, Lisa, saying that people can kind of, it's more convenient. They can kind of fit those things into their schedule.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
with it being virtual, you can get speakers, you can attract a greater range of speakers. So you can have an all-day conference and have speakers spanning 12 or 14 different time zones,
Yeah.
but they are all on the same virtual stage.
Yeah. And you were going to say something, Lisa. Were you going to say something? Okay. Maybe I missed it. So one of the things I want to ask you about too is, because I've read quite a bit about this actually in the Beam report, which is a virtual event platform, and then also in the Amex Global Business Travel, a report that they did, that meeting spending is on the rise, like dramatically. One of them said 83%. They were planning on seeing that increase, and the other one was 65% of meeting planners said that the budgets were going to increase. So are you seeing that?
Absolutely. I mean, much like our home, as consumers, we're all seeing with inflation going up, there's increases everywhere. So food and beverage and airfare. So I hear that from a lot of my clients as well, that their spend is higher, and being more creative on where they're spending the money.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that, about the creative places how to spend money?
Sure. Things like things maybe where there's audiovisual that they don't need to necessarily bring in. Maybe there are, somebody had told me the other day, they bring in swag and they're not doing that. They're actually doing little cards that says there was a donation made to a local charity instead of giving things away. Maybe instead of having an elaborate breakfast or something, it's more of a continental, and spending the money in a place where, maybe the reception or something like that.
Okay. Other thoughts on that? Okay. So I want to, something else that I saw, because you had mentioned the idea of saving money and about, cutting back on, breakfast or things like that. And one of the things that I read about was that sustainability. And I read that in a lot of different things. And I was kind of curious what they were talking about. And they were saying, using water pitchers instead of having, bottles of water, which, been kind of like the thing for years. You go there, there's always bottles of water, but doing that, and, eliminating using plastic and things like that. So what do you see when it comes to that?
Well, I mean, I can tell you it's a very interesting thing that you should bring up, because that is a big concern. Sustainability hasn't gone away. The idea of it, I think, and being green as possible, and, reduce our carbon footprint, and, certainly try not to be as wasteful with certain things. The interesting thing, though, is that, for example, before COVID hit, I planned a big, it was an insurance company event in the city. And one of the things, we were trying to do is keep things creative, but also to be sustainable. So things like that, water pitchers and things like that. Plus, we were trying to be, fresh and everything. So we had like these infused pitcher, big things of water and stuff like that, with the spigot that people could serve, serve themselves, and things like that. However, and also about disposable dishes and things that are not, things that are not, that are more communal. After COVID, and then all these other little things, we've had a strange sort of a mix, because now you're like, well, I'm not quite so sure I feel like having, pitchers of water that everybody has just been near or touching, or cups and all those things. I would much rather either carry my own bottle in, and you can refill it anywhere you want. But there's a thing about that. And, P.S., that's not how you spread COVID, but I'm just saying that there's a lot of things about it. And also disposable plates and things, and reusable things. I mean, if you go so much even for it's just hard to, it's just odd. So sustainability on a top line level is still very important. And I think things like, for example, like they have programs in place. A lot of hotels do, and venues that, for example, if you have leftover food that has not been touched or whatever, they will donate them to local shelters, or, certain things. If there's even the swagger stuff that's left over, any papers, pens, pads, they give it to schools and stuff like that. So that, I find, is definitely alive and strong. And in fact, I encourage it. It's a wonderful feeling to know that your stuff isn't just getting, trashed. But like I said, the food and beverage aspect is it's still iffy, because we're still having, getting together and everything. We're all okay with it, but just don't sit that close to me. And I'm not going to the communal watering hole kind of thing. So
no, I hear you. I have found that, and it's funny that, the different levels of comfort. We're actually going over to a friend's in a couple of weeks, and they requested that, like, everybody that goes takes a COVID test before they go, and it's just because it's the level of comfort. And I would think that, Stephanie, perhaps that idea of donating rather than giving swag is another way to be sustainable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Donating, or, utilizing apps. I mean, Lisa, you know, some of the things that, you know, instead of utilizing paper, there are definitely other things outside of the food and beverage realm that where people can be sustainable as well. Obviously, with housekeeping at hotels, you know, people putting the notice on their door not to clean the room. I personally don't want anybody in my room when I go to a hotel. I would much rather not have anybody in there. That's just me. But yeah, there are definitely ways of being sustainable, and it is important.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I'm always like, do not disturb for however long I'm staying in my room. So, Christopher, it looked like you wanted to add something there.
You know, the sustainability aspect is intriguing. Now, is that for the events that are in person? Is that a selling point or a consideration that goes in right up front for both the venue as well as the client?
I mean, there are many companies that will submit RFPs and they will have their list of questions about sustainability. What do we offer, or things that they require?
Yeah, we actually, I do a lot of work with PepsiCo, and part of our addendum that we send with every single hotel contract says that there's a green, you know, we are trying to be as green as possible. And we do ask a couple of questions like that, and also say the same things like, you know, recycling bins in the place, you know, recycling bins for the stuff, and separating the trash and stuff. Well, the thing is that, you know, it's an interesting thing, because of course everybody says yes, and then I'm always sitting there going, are they really going through that? Are they really? Because I don't know. I see the same people cleaning that stuff up, and it looks like it's all going to the same place. But the bottom line is, it's, you know, you're saying that you are, and that the assumption is that it is being carried out, and that is an important thing. But yeah, I don't know though, Christopher, to your point, I don't know if I've ever heard of that as a selling point. I think if the group that you are entertaining, you know, are hosting, is part of that whole thing, they definitely need to know that, and they will promote it as far as it. But for the most part, the things that I'm doing, no, we don't usually, it's not a selling point. It's usually just like a side a side want.
Okay.
Ask,
Now,
I should say, a side ask. Let's put it that
I'm
way.
curious, from a virtual standpoint, one of the things I've seen is companies sending the quote unquote swag to the participants beforehand. So everyone's in a virtual meeting and they get their swag that they can display during the meeting.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, that's fun.
Yeah, we did that. We did that when we did the virtual meetings. We had one of them because we always have, you know, an opening night event, and one of them we did kind of like a Hawaiian luau, and we sent out leis and straws and recipes for cocktails and mocktails that people, so we could all kind of be together even though we were apart. And I'm just curious about, you know, the whole idea of in person, because I did find a couple of events that are still talking about safety in terms of COVID. And I saw online there was one event, it was kind of like a dance music festival thing, but it wasn't that long ago. I mean, it was the end of December into the beginning of January, and they were still requiring masks and everything. So, but is that like over now in 2023?
You know, in my experience, it is very like you said earlier, Annette, that there are, like, just like people will do, sometimes the people are still requesting that, you know, people test before they get on a plane, or test, you know, before you know, or each morning of a meeting. We've had, even as far as even last summer, but I'm talking about for this year. I'm curious to see how we're going to handle it. But I mean, they would tell them to take and stay home if you test positive. But as far as what we're doing, for the most part, it's people say, you know, masking is not requested, suggested, but not required. Because it's very difficult, and most people are not. I've almost most people are not. in meetings or out on the street. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
And, I wanted to just tell you that I read a little something in preparation for this, a couple of little things, and it says that this is from PCMA, the Professional Convention Management Association, that they said that in-person events planning remains strong. 3 out of 4 events planned for 2023 will have in-person participants. And then he said, but then out of the percentage, approximately 1 in 5 will have a hybrid element. And I think that the reality of it is that one of the blessings as in disguise of the pandemic is this aspect of the ability to realize that you don't have to go into the office every day. You do not have to meet in person every time. And that there are some scenarios where people are absolutely comfortable. And like Christopher said, even if you have some worldwide famous speaker and you want that person to talk at your event for 15 minutes as a keynote, you have your setup already there. Your room is ready to rock. You got your dual screens, you got everybody all set. They're all excited. The music pumps, and boom, on comes whoever this person is on the screen. The fact is that, again, the availability is better. Possibly the price for them to speak is less, and there's not all the other fanfare that goes with it. And I do believe that now that we've figured out that Zoom and all these other, including what we're on now, these platforms work and are completely good for some purposes, not all. They're never going away. And I don't want them to, frankly. I love the fact that we can get into a meeting. I can join something that's happening. Like if there's an aspect of a meeting that I want some training or something that's happening at a bigger event, I will pay just for that one little seminar just to come on in.
Yeah. No, I hear you on this. So I just want to take a minute to say hello to some people that have joined us. Our friend Brenda Miller, our visitors and my friend. We're so happy to see you, Brenda. And hello from New York City. Brenda's in Detroit, Metro Detroit, and Mary Susan Schilling. Thank you for joining us. And also hello to Charmaine Nesby. Thanks for joining us as well. And I'd like to turn back to the speakers because I think this is so interesting, and I love the idea of the the hybrid or virtual because it's so convenient. And I'm sure if you have big speakers like the PA conference, they had Marlee Maitland was one of the people that spoke there, and I'm sure it was easier for them to have her present virtually than to actually go there in person, even though it's a fairly large women's conference. They have, I think, 4 of them in the year in different parts of the country. But one of the things that I found when I was doing my research is that diversity is a top key issue to have as a topic, but also to have speakers. And so I would imagine that having a virtual event might make that easier. And I looked up some data, and the most recent data I could find on like gender, one was like 69% were men, and that was a couple of years ago. And the more recent one in 2021 was 55% are men. And so I'm curious first about the topic, and then also about the speakers. Is it easier, and how can organizations get have diversity in their speakers?
So I am the director of membership for an organization in New Jersey, and when we're doing events, virtual and live, it is definitely something that we look at. Who our speakers are, who do they represent, and definitely of an equal, bringing people in that everyone can relate to. So that it's not heavily weighted in one area. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. Plus, I mean, for me, I think, you also have diversity of thought. When you have, younger, older, black, white, male, female, that you're going to have a different, different takes, even if it's on the same topic. So what do y'all think about that?
Absolutely. One of the things I've observed is just asking the question, who do you know who doesn't look like you that can speak on this topic?
Hmm.
It's a good way to ask it.
That
That's
is
a
a
good
very
one.
good way to ask it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that makes for so much more of a dynamic thing. It's funny too. I'm sorry. I literally was like looking up. So just like you said, Annette, all those things that you're saying, the things about diversity and stuff, are the buzzwords. These are the things that are going around. And one of the things is, it said that the meeting professional, which is MPI's publication, said
Uh-huh.
that one of the people said that humanity has undergone a reset and no one is the same as they were in 2020. So people don't want to invest the time, money, and energy to travel to an event to just listen to someone talk at them. That they could get that at home on their screen.
Yeah.
And so they said that we should be designing events that focus on connection and interaction,
Mhm.
and to feed that need, the need of, yeah, is this somebody different? Is this something different? Oh, but oh, by the way, look what they know about exactly that topic that I want to hear about. And I think I think it's very exciting and very dynamic. And that's trending is my point. So you're right.
I did a bunch of research, and everything I read said that was, it was the number one topic actually that people were wanting to have. That was and the next one, the number here was 58.1%, said that was the top topic, followed by leadership and motivation at 57%. And then there was like health, mental health, and something else, wellness or something, I think. So it definitely is. And I'm hoping that it's more than a buzzword. I'm hoping that it's actually, happening. So is that what you're seeing though?
I would say absolutely. I mean, it's
It's conscious.
definitely bringing people in of all ages, ranks. People want to be able to gather and network and learn from one another. And if they're going to go live, they want it to be something where it's worth their while, like Lisa, what you're saying, that if they're going out there, that it's a worthwhile experience and something that they'll remember, and not going somewhere and going, okay, that was okay.
Yeah.
So it definitely makes it a challenge, shall we say, that you want to make sure that you're doing something where your attendees are leaving and feeling like they've value in the experience that they're anticipating or getting at an event.
Yeah. Rather than, oh, I could have done this from home. So
Exactly.
Yes. And so be glad that they went. Like, I'm so glad I went. That
Exactly.
was great.
Mhm.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
So we have a question from Brenda, and the question is it better in your expert opinions to offer a hybrid option, or is preferred to go 100% in person if a majority of attendees prefer in person? So she'd like you all, not me, to share some pros and cons, and says she's assuming cost of technology and production of online can be expensive for hybrid. So big question there, Brenda. So what do y'all say?
Well, it goes back to what Lisa was saying about design. Whether the event is in person or hybrid or completely virtual, design has to be the starting point. How are you going to engage the audience? And if it is going to be a hybrid meeting, then neither audience can be an afterthought. It has to be designed for everyone, wherever platform they're on, to be engaged.
Yes. Exactly, because you certainly don't want the people that are like that opted for the hybrid option. Let's say it's offered. are like, I shouldn't have done that, or, it just wasn't as handled as good, or has a lot of frustration points. Because I do know that there are frustration points with this, using this feed, technology and stuff like that. I mean, it is subject to issues, and, our speaker, that's why when you said about being prepared with the recorded version, we actually had that, which was really, really helpful. But the other point about the monetary aspect of it, in answer to your question, Brenda, as I said, there are aspects of live and virtual, and then the ones that are hybrid. There is an element that is a little bit more cost. You do need to have more technology. You have to be prepared for it. You have to make sure that your bandwidth is right. Sometimes, though, it's ridiculous that you have to pay for what we pay for bandwidth and stuff like that in this day and age. But there's the facilities and the technology companies. Look, it's a very expensive, it's a commodity, and so they're just gonna, that's how they make their money too. But the point is that if you can balance it and just design it, as was mentioned from the start, and say, okay, well, we're not going to go insane, but we already know we have to do this setup. What is the extra amount of money that it's going to cost to bring it, so that we can bring in this hybrid component and it works?
Yeah.
I mean, back in the day, I'll just tell you, I mean, Stephanie said when we started, how many years it's been. I didn't say, but it's got to be 30 years myself. And we've known each other in different capacities over those years. And that's another nice thing about this industry.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, we did satellite broadcasts. So there's one location where there's one panel of doctors speaking, and they blast it out by satellite technology to all kinds of, Ruth's Chris steakhouses and restaurants and everything. And that is a challenge, but we made it happen. And it was far less, I think, technically savvy as we are now with the Zoom platforms and things like this. So, the producers, your client, the producers, your company, your management all have to be aware that if you say you want to do hybrid, that you have to figure out, is it going to be worth what we get out of it? Like, what we give is what we get. And also just be prepared that you're probably going to have a component that is going to cost a little bit more. But on the flip side, if you can get 25% of people that wouldn't be going at all to attend, that may outweigh the benefits, outweigh the cost.
Yeah. So Brenda says, good point, about neither audience being an afterthought, and that, is a lot of what you were saying. And it is really interesting, because I think it is the balance of, when I say about a money maker, I mean that they get more people to attend. So if it was a conference, I don't know, a smaller conference, if it would have been, 1,000 people in person, maybe you'd get 1,500 or something to come to the hybrid. So I'm curious about hybrid, like how that might work. The conference that I attended, that was hybrid, it was one day in person and one day was the hybrid. It was really kind of all virtual. I guess you could be there and watch it on a big screen, and then it was, the people who were coming in for the virtual part, we only had access to one day. And like the bigger speakers were like the first day. So they, have you come in person. So how do you think that's going to be? Is it going to be, a mix like that? Or is like someone who's doing the virtual, or are they going to just be sort of maybe shortchanged, although, maybe get a cheaper ticket?
They shouldn't be shortchanged. Neither audience should be. Hybrid done well takes a lot of thought and planning. So it's not just sticking a camera at the back of the room and aiming it and then putting a screen up and then showing the virtual participants. It has to be thought out a lot more than that.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. One thing you might want to do is just have something to engage both audiences similarly. So instead of having a poll that's just on the screen, have everyone complete that poll using their phone, because chances are they have their phone with them. So using a tool that where everyone answers, whether in person or virtual, on the phone and then display the results. Have a moderator in both places so that you have someone to address all the questions that are coming in online. Hey, we have a great question coming in on this, and making sure that that is balanced against the person in the room. With the person in the room, everyone who is in the room should be speaking into a microphone, whether they are going up to a standard stationary microphone or they're having someone
Yeah.
run around with one.
Mhm.
Uh, so just
Yeah.
kind of planning that out and thinking it through is a little bit like the old uh, daytime shows where you would have uh, an audience or someone running through the audience to keep that person engaged with the at-home audience.
Mhm.
And the at-home audience, hey, when people started phoning in,
Mhm.
they felt they were part of it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. And I'm glad that you mentioned the microphone. When I went to I went to a conference in New Orleans, which I had mentioned, the keynote speaker was immensely disappointing because she was walking around the room without a without a mic. And so you couldn't really, although she was, being immersed in the audience. We were sit tables, and of course it was September, so we're not sitting too close. And she was, walking around, but you couldn't hear her because she was not mic'd. And so it
Oh
was,
no, that's awful.
Yeah.
That's a bad planning. Yeah, that's not good. That was not good.
so do you what about the idea of, and I know, I've been to virtual conferences that do this, and I'm going to a hybrid in September, which I think is going to do this, where you can sell sort of access to the presentations afterwards.
I
Is
think
that
a lot of conferences are doing that. I think especially if you've paid the money to have, your team there and stuff, and there's no reason why it shouldn't be recorded or offered up as a secondary thing. I don't know, I always think to myself, is it advantageous when you have a conference, if it's a live conference, to offer a hybrid component? Does that detract from, like, in other words, if a person thought, if your attendees thought the only way I can get access this content is to physically be there, or else I'm going to miss out, you'd make more of an effort, I think, to be there. But by the same token, hey, if you maybe you'll get, like you were saying, in that, it's a little bit cheaper for people to go. Let's say you only get the one day. Okay, so that's something someone's willing to do. Either they
Mhm.
don't have a company backing them to pay that to go, or you pay. It's like, but listen, at least I'll get something. And then even more still, why not? If there's an after thing and people will pay to see a recorded portion, it's all
Yeah,
revenue. And it depends on your message too. What is the purpose? As the first thing Christopher said, is what's the purpose of your meeting? What is your goal? And once you've determined that, I was like, well, if it's to make money and make sure you get your message out to as many people, you're going to do it any way you can. Just like social media, you're going to use what you got.
yeah, yeah. No, I think that is important. Any other thoughts on that before I move on to the next topic I have here?
So sure, one more thought. That should also be part of the planning process. If the end result is going to be a DVD or something that people can watch, like membership or whatever, then it should be done with that in mind. What do I mean by that? Well, the production values. Just having somebody in front of a screen does not necessarily make an engaging video. We've all seen horrible videos or videos that's like, wow, I didn't miss anything. Plan for it to be an engaging video if it's going to be something that is going to be watched later.
Yeah.
You're right.
One of the things that I was reading about too, and I'm really curious, because I read in a couple of places that talking about immersive experiences, in technology, and you know, the conference that I went to, I mean, the immersion was the Q&A with the speaker. I mean, that was like the whole interactive thing. So what kinds of, you know, technology, like what what does it mean? I'm curious. And Christopher, since you do all the virtual stuff, maybe can you like start us off on that?
Sure. Uh, for sometimes, well, like during breaks, for instance, that can be part of the immersive process where there is Q&A, but it is not necessarily germane to the topic. It is, hey, you know, what are some of the, because the speakers might be in one locale or speakers might be in a variety of locales, what is the local cuisine there? What, you know, what should we see if we visit that city? Um, Sometimes we talk about karaoke. You know,
Okay.
what's your go-to karaoke song? Now, I've used that question as a means of getting the sound check because the standard question of, well, what did you have for breakfast? Coffee? Nothing? Nothing? All right. So there is zero engagement with that. But when you say, all right, so what's your go-to karaoke song? Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has the ability to sing, even if it is only in the privacy of their car.
That's a great icebreaker.
Yeah, yeah. See, I don't sing. For me, it's like, what's your favorite dance alone song? You know, and that would be it for me. So, because that's how I, you know, have a little fun. I dance around with the dogs. You know, don't tell anybody that I said that. I mean, I want anybody to know, but we'll just keep it our secret here. So, so as we're really still, well, you know, we're starting 2023. What do you think are going to be the big challenges for the events industry, meetings, you know, this year?
I would say a couple of things. Number one, and I mentioned it earlier, is availability, trying to find space. Again, I was with clients the other day, and one of them had mentioned that they were looking to host a meeting in May, and they started planning it in early January, and they had to push it out like 6 months. And so they had to find a different location for May because this place they really wanted to go to, and they pushed it out. So I think the flexibility with dates is definitely something that'll be a challenge. And there's something else I thought of, and I forgot what it is.
That's okay. If you think of it, as Lisa's going to jump in.
Yeah.
Stephanie, I'll tell you, one of the things that, you know, when you were talking about availabilities are one of them, and it's not just of the facility, it's availability of the other things, that the components that go into it. So like, for example, the speakers,
Yep.
the AV company, entertainment, restaurants, the outside venues, transportation, buses. Certain cities, as you go in there, it's like, look, they get 3 big conferences in there, or 3 big things. You good luck. You're not going to make a group of 50 people. Everybody's going to take an Uber to everything we do. I mean, but that's what happens.
Right.
So that's what I'm finding. And the other thing is it's not that companies aren't necessarily willing or able to spend the money, but you know, I'm finding that everything is extremely expensive, as Stephanie said when we first started. I mean, Everything is exponentially higher. Food costs and everything else. Even hotels are asking us, they want their guarantees like a week in advance because they have to be able to ensure they'll have the product. You know, and again, and lead times to get stuff, and printing things and shipping things and all kinds of stuff. So, you know, I find that that's a big challenge. Like what used to be, like you'd go into a city and there'd be plenty of vendors. Well, so many of the vendors that we use, these peripheral services that are tied to live meetings in particular, they were decimated. They really were. Some of them just closed up shop, including planners and salespeople and stuff in hotels. There's just a whole chain of events. And so now that we're all coming back like crazy, who's going to do all the work? Who do I call? If there's 2 places in town and they're all booked because the hotel's booked, you're really kind of up the creek. So that's my concern.
And what about staffing? I mean, when we went to New Orleans in September, I mean, they were very short staffed. It was impossible. You couldn't get, people that wanted their rooms clean. You couldn't get rooms clean. You couldn't. I mean, there were so many things that you just couldn't get because they couldn't get people. Is that going to be continuing? Or people going to be able to staff up?
Well, it depends on the job. A lot of the jobs that, there's just been a lot of things that have been hard. A lot of the things. However, I've got one more quote.
Okay.
I got one more thing. I just read that per CNBC, the January job report shows unemployment hit a 53-year low. And leisure and hospitality added 128,000 jobs to lead all job sectors. So, in answer to your question, hope springs eternal. I hope that is legitimately the thing. But, it's a little bit slow moving. You got to get people in there and you got to make it move. But I hope by the end of 2023 that things are ramped up enough and all of the places that we need to be up again are there, and that the companies are willing and able to pay for it, because now OPS, it costs more than it used to.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And so I do want to ask you one thing, because I read that the top meeting destinations were major urban centers. No big surprise there. And the 5 that they had were Las Vegas, Orlando, New York City, Dallas, and Atlanta. And except for New York, the one thing they have in common is they're all warm. I mean, you don't have to worry, I would guess, as much about the weather. Although I attended a conference in Las Vegas, a SHRM conference years ago, I thought I was like on the sun there. It was so hot. But is it is it going to be those? Are those going to be the main things, Stephanie? You're talking about availability. Are people going to have to, maybe, I don't know, if they want to go to Dallas, that maybe they would have to go to Austin or something like that to find availability?
Well, Austin is a pretty hip city already.
Oh yeah, I love it there, but I'm just saying.
So no, I know. I mean, I think that there definitely is going to be a need to explore other avenues and not go to the norm where everybody goes. But everybody goes to Vegas and Orlando. That's not ever going to change,
And New York City.
Yeah, all of the ones you listed. I mean, that's where people have been going forever. But yes, I do believe that they will, be looking at different areas, and also just bringing it back to, when you're bringing your attendees in and wanting them to have an experience, what's something that's different? So looking at a different city, looking at a different location, looking at something that people haven't done before is going to attract people as well.
Yeah. And I would imagine, though, people would want to be there. I went to a conference that was supposedly in Chicago, but it was not. We were not in Chicago. We were in, I think, Lombard, which is like, I don't know, a half an hour. And it was so disappointing for us because we thought we were going to Chicago. And not that the conference, it was a good conference and everything, but, we were at a hotel with, nothing really around us. I think there was a Target nearby that we could walk over.
Yeah, I know.
I liked the snacks for my room and stuff, but it was disappointing that we weren't in the major city. So.
And that is the problem sometimes. And I'm having that problem now. I'm trying to cite this big meeting.
Right.
And it's hard. I mean, we're doing exactly that. We targeted 4 big cities. One of them is Denver and Dallas. And where's it? And I'm telling you, it is like and Nashville. And we are floored because if you know how many hotels there are in these cities, and they are completely not available. Yeah. And we're like, how is this possible?
Yeah.
And so, and that's exactly we were saying. I'm like this, well, we might have to, maybe we'll branch out, And I said, and Christopher, I said, what about Detroit? Why don't we go to Detroit? They have plenty of places. I said, like this, they've got the car museum, and they've got the flight museum, and all kinds of cool stuff out there, and the Motown and everything. Let's go.
Exactly.
But everybody's like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, yes, because they have
Wow.
plenty of.
That sounds great to me.
Detroit is an
Me too.
international destination.
I would imagine. I mean, I have
That's
a
what I
conference
told them.
I'm supposed to be going to. It's in Colorado. It's in Colorado Springs. I'm like, I'm not excited to go there. I'll probably, go, but I'm not excited to go there. I would be way more excited to go to Detroit. I could meet Christopher. I could meet Brenda, and I'm sure it's a rocking town because
bring your passport too. You can go right over to Canada.
Exactly.
It really is great. See, now I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to push a little bit harder for that.
You should. So I grew up on Motown. I mean, I grew up well, not New York City, but a big city in Connecticut, a big urban area, and so that's what I grew up on, Motown, and I just can't get enough of it.
That's your go-to dance?
I'm sorry?
Your go-to dance is Motown?
Well, actually, right now it's a little, mixed, but sort of. Yeah, I love Motown. Every once in a while I'll go out and see one of those bands, and it's kind of like, But my favorite all time is Earth, Wind, and Fire, and I've seen them many times and sat real close to them too. So that's always exciting. So anyway, our time together is just about over, and I always like to ask, because I think we've covered a lot of different topics here tonight. But I'd like you to, there's always things that people think should be shared that I didn't bring up, and somehow it was, missed in conversation. So if you could each share something that you think is, a good point to end on, something you'd like to share, and let people know how they can find you.
Okay. So I will share this, during COVID, a lot of clients and peers that I spoke to said it was an opportunity for them to stop and realize that they needed to take care of themselves and needed to have time with their family and be more present. And I think that wellness is definitely something that is very important right now. And that's not just in what we eat or our exercise. It's also mental. It's okay not to be okay. And I think that that's something that we all need to just make sure that we're checking in with one another and not forgetting that that is still very important. And in an industry where everybody is going so fast paced right now, it's like, what do they call it? Drinking out of a fire hose. Don't forget to take a walk, or don't forget to check in with a friend, or don't forget to drink your water. I mean, I know it sounds very trivial, but we have to take care of ourselves first. That would be what I would say. And again, I'm Stephanie with Mohegan Sun. And you can look me up on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with everybody here, and anything that we can do, I would love to discuss it more with anyone who's interested in learning more.
Thank you. Lisa, let's go ladies first.
Well, I think that the thing to keep in mind that, is that really, as I had said, that COVID really did a number on us all. But I have to say that, it's we have to put it sort of behind us now. And we just really need to be a little bit better every day. And and as Stephanie said, be present. Do the best that you can every single day. It's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. But if we set out the days going, you know what? I'm going to get through this day. Hopefully going to be nice to people while I'm getting through this day, being nice to myself, and also just do the best that you can, and learn what you can from what you've done, what you do wrong. So what? And then we'll just move it on, because you know what? Shoulda, woulda, coulda, and who could have ever foreseen where we would all be? I could not have even thought that this year would be the way it is already shaping up to be. So, and I'm Lisa Swartz. I am with Services Outsource Specialists, LLC. And if you ever need help planning a meeting or just want help with contract review or whatever, or anything, just reach out to me. I'm also on LinkedIn. And I'd very much like to connect with the folks that are watching this, anybody that watches it in the future. And I'm very happy to meet Christopher. And I'm so happy to see Stephanie and Annette again. Thanks so much for this.
Thank you.
Well, this has just been a delight. So, all right, my words of wisdom, my advice, building upon what has been said, show grace, learn, and share. Raise the bar on what you can deliver, whether, speaking of events, whether your event is in person or online or hybrid, raise the bar on what you can deliver to attendees by thinking of the audience and what you want them to walk away with. Grow with grace and extend grace not only to others, but also to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Johnson, I welcome your LinkedIn connection. Personalize it. Tell me something that you learned or enjoyed in this conversation.
Well, thank you, and thank you so much. It was just such a treat to see all of you tonight, and I thank you so much for your time and generously sharing your knowledge. So I'm Annette Richmond, and to everyone else out there, have a good evening, afternoon, or the rest of your day. And thanks so much for joining us, and I'll see you again real soon.
Thank you, Annette.
Thank